BruceDropEmOff is someone I don't exactly look up to in a literal life sense, but I will admit I do within the realm of content creation. I think he is truly one of the few people that never exactly played a character when it came to streaming, and I think it is honestly pretty safe to say that many people can kind of agree with this, especially when you compare him to someone like a Jynxzi. I think it is pretty obvious that Jynxzi plays up his personality and his energy, and he can kind of turn it up or down depending on what he's doing, whether he's on or off stream, either he's on stream or he's doing a podcast, whatever the case may be. But I feel like I've come to the realization that both sides of this come with many different issues and many different benefits, honestly, and I think it is probably safer to play more of a character when it comes to content creation, which to me is honestly kind of unfortunate. Content creation kind of came up in this way where people are just acting not exactly crazy, but it has, been hyper energy or whatever, scripted content, things like that. Even when I think back on the YouTubers I was watching when I was 10 years old, they were very obviously, playing a character, and when you look back on the content, a decent amount of it honestly was probably scripted. But I feel like when you are not 100% yourself, you actually allow for a lot more stability when it comes to your mental health and when it comes to your content. For example, if I were to load up a Jynxzi stream, or I loaded up any of his YouTube videos, I have a pretty good idea of how he is going to act, how he's going to be talking, what he's going to be talking about, or what he's going to be doing in general. There isn't exactly a lot to be questioned, which is honestly a good thing. Let's be honest, you can see his numbers. Jynxzi is the top 1% of the top 1% when it comes to content creation. And I think it's probably because doing this kind of allows him to control his environment a lot easier. It allows him to react to change, react to different metas, and it allows his viewers to build a much more consistent idea of what he will be doing. And even outside of his personal audience, it is probably pretty good for brands and sponsors, I could imagine, because they know exactly what to expect. And if you are generally one of those people that play as a more brand safe character, then you can find these collaborations with sponsors or brand deals a lot easier. But on the other side of predictability is expectation. When you don't exactly align with the image that you have set with people, or you don't really, do the same things you have always done on your stream or within your YouTube videos or whatever the case may be, then parts of your audience will kind of lose trust or feel some type of way about your content when it changes. I feel like this is extremely visible, especially when it comes to thinking back on older TikTokers that you don't see on your For You page anymore, and then you go maybe to their page, maybe they're still doing the same type of content, but a lot of the times they aren't doing the content they were doing 2 or 3 years ago. And because of that, they have lost a vast amount of their audience. They're not getting pushed anymore, and it is a lot harder for them to grow or hit the same consistent views that they always did. Yes, they may have 2 million followers on TikTok, but they're averaging probably 10 to 20,000 views, which 10 to 20,000 views is good still, but honestly, as a creator that does it for a job, you have to think about these things. Sometimes it can get really hard to break out of that box. And I think a really good example of this is Ludwig. I am admittedly a pretty big fan of Ludwig, and I've been following him since pretty much the start of his streaming career. And he's pretty much known for, and was known for, video games and being funny and having just high quality content. That's the Ludwig. But when Ludwig made Mogul Mail, a channel based on relevant drama, news, etc., I realized he gathered. Oh, damn! I actually fucked up. How do I actually fuck up? Because I never fuck up, dude. I never fuck up, really, dude. I never really fuck up, dude. But when Ludwig made Mogul Mail, which is a channel based on relevant drama, news, etc., I realized he gathered quite the reputation from people outside of his audience and even within his audience as a fence sitter. Never really giving a true take, kind of always taking the safe route when it came to controversy. Maybe he switches his views, but many will say he does anything but stand his ground on a take. And over time, I saw the internet go from having no real negative feelings or opinions about Ludwig to a lot of people kind of only knowing him for this Mogul Mail fence sitting content. And this happened the second he stepped outside of his box, kind of, stepping outside of his regular character. Now, let's take a step backwards or forwards. Fuck it, who cares? Let's get into BruceDropEmOff. Known to be probably one of the most realist and maybe too real content creators on Twitch. This guy has had pretty similar content, and he hasn't exactly changed much since he has started making videos and has started streaming. He never really, tried something new per se in the instance of like changing his brand or heavily altering the content he makes, whatever the case may be, because he kind of just is the content. I mean, yeah, he started out by, getting in Fortnite lobbies and flaming people, going on E-dates and, the Raj Patel show. Actually, whoa, can I even say Raj Patel? Okay, that's what it was called at the time. I know it's not called that anymore, Austin. I'm sorry. But he did all of these things as a teenager. Of course, he ended up not doing this as he just matured and, got a little bit older. But overall, what he has done and what he's been doing has just been largely talking to his chat, interacting with his community, and that's kind of it. I mean, he does play games, but most of his streams are just based on, just chatting. Again, what I'm largely trying to say is that he doesn't really try hard to, pivot his content or adapt to whatever metas. And you can say that for a lot of big streamers once you reach like a certain point where it doesn't really matter what you do on stream because you have built such a large audience. But it is a little different when that is entirely how you grew as a content creator. And honestly, this is probably great for him. He doesn't exactly have to tire himself out trying to act like a certain type of way over, long years or long periods of time. He doesn't really have to play like the new popping game. He doesn't have to do like girl content or whatever the case is. He doesn't really have to chase these metas. Also, side note, notice how I'm saying have to. I'm not saying he hasn't, played whatever the most popular game it is at the time, like Among Us or like COD or whatever. Like, don't sit here getting caught up in the nuance. This is largely unscripted and I'm yapping. You should probably get the idea by now. But if you are a bot and you are ignoring my point simply because you disagree, it's okay, because I'll provide you some extra context. Let's take Disguised Toast, for example. Me and a lot of other people will simply not watch Disguised Toast if it is not like an Among Us gameplay or, he's in a big Among Us lobby or whatever. And maybe for a lot of people, it's Hearthstone because that's what he blew up off of. Even though Among Us hasn't been the meta for a long time, it's what I know him for. And I do like his personality, of course, but I really don't have much interest in watching any of his other content. And honestly, his views largely reflect this idea. You can see a noticeable difference between when he plays Among Us and when he does not. This isn't just some random thing I made up to kind of prove my point. That said, I do like Toast. Shout out to Disguised Toast. But alongside this authenticity, you can create a very, very, very solid community who have a much stronger and realer relationship in the realest sense you can get from a parasocial standpoint. It is still just entertainment at the end of the day, and you don't know these people. Neither do I. But that is kind of exactly what I made this video about. And now that you have all the context of what I actually want to say, it is time for me to really start explaining. See, this authenticity you can see with a select few streamers comes with a price. One of Bruce's most known controversies was between him and DDG. And I think this is probably one of the greatest examples of what I'm trying to say. Long story short, for those of you who don't know, Bruce was on stream with a popular rapper, Lucky, and pretty much said that he doesn't like DDG's music and that Lucky should not collaborate or be on a DDG song and that he was saving him from that. This led to a massive argument between DDG and Bruce on a later live stream, but I actually want to talk about was the initial moment that it happened. Because Bruce, I feel like, wasn't even lying about liking DDG's music. This was very obvious throughout the whole beef. It was a thing he reiterated quite a few times. The main problem was falling with the fact that he said Lucky should not be on a DDG song, otherwise trying to stop what could be helpful for DDG's music career. Bruce is two things. One, someone who trolls even when he shouldn't, and two, someone who is always telling the truth, or at least his own truth. Now, for a disclaimer, I do not agree with a lot of things Bruce has said and done, and I do not take his side 100% of the time in a lot of his controversies. But also, that's just not the point of the video, so don't just come crying in the comments about the things he's said or has done. Like, I can remember when he was talking about that sketch situation, and I think he was really overly trolling right there. But at the end of the day, acting surprised that he said what he said would just be kind of flat out dumb, because he's always been like that. He literally built his career from doing similar things over many years. Even when he got into it with Your Rage and Kai, Your Rage kept saying that it's just Bruce. Like, this isn't surprising to him, even though he was kind of, disappointed. He is not exactly surprised that Bruce said or did what he did, even though it was extremely negative.
Right. That just is what it is. It's Bruce. I know Bruce. It's not nothing new. He talks shit. You could have known this nigga for 30 years. He gonna talk shit. This is what it is. This is what this nigga do.
But when you act like this, it does open you up to a decent amount of vulnerability, especially when you are someone with a very large platform. You are unable to walk any of your statements back as a joke, especially after years of building yourself on being authentic. This was a common denominator for a lot of Bruce's largest controversies, and I think this is something that also happened in particular with Mizkif. I watched a lot of Mizkif, and I mean, the guy was very massive. He played games I liked. I mean, honestly, he was a pretty good streamer. I'm not going to sit here and act like he wasn't popular for a reason. But I think he also suffered from a similar problem of not really playing a character. Or maybe he was playing too much of a character. Personally, I think it was the former, but you guys can let me know if you think differently. But Mizkif is someone who is extremely impulsive. I mean, I feel like even if he was playing some kind of act or having some kind of character, his real personality was kind of always slipping through the cracks. Recently, Mizkif came under fire for emotional and physical abuse and a long page of drama outside of that. But I have no real reason to entirely cover that here. One thing though did stick out to me. Emiru, which is his ex that posted about him initially, outlined in her document about him that he cared about viewership heavily and couldn't really stand, and he would get mad when she would outperform him. Now, what I'm about to bring up is something I don't think anyone has ever even talked about before, but I listen and watch The Yard, which is Ludwig's podcast, and I have been listening to it since it came out. While re-listening to The Yard at work, I heard this.
He's way more chill, because online he's hyper at all times and constantly on and always action packed and has no lull between content pieces. And then in person, he's like, yeah, dude, yeah, man.
There's a normal human, right?
Yeah.
I mean, are there people that you've met that are like that all the time? Because that would be kind of
Mizkif. Yeah,
right?
Mizkif. I think Mizkif is exhausted in his own skin. Mizkif must be like, damn, I don't stop.
Ludwig explains that Mizkif is never really different. He doesn't really have an off switch on his personality. How he acts on stream is largely how he acts off stream, which makes his behavior and the fact that he's being exposed for certain things a lot worse. Because now people can go back and look at old Mizkif VODs and clips, and the proof has always been in the pudding. He cannot separate himself from his content. But when you are unable to detach yourself and your personal feelings and your emotions from your content, you can actually have a lot more freedom, and you're able to build off of that freedom. But it also comes with quite a few negative things that tend to happen. But it does seem like it has way, way, way more impact on your own personal well-being. 6'7". 6'7". 6'7". Florida couple is going viral after naming their baby 6'7". Sorry. Anyway, I can't imagine that Bruce would have left the internet over what he said was overwhelming amounts of negativity if he was just playing a character, or if he was playing it safer, maybe holding his tongue more. And honestly, I even think that authenticity can genuinely hurt your growth. And I'm going to end this point off with this example. Even if you don't watch this type of content though, I'll put it in a way you understand. Sacred Almighty is someone I have been watching for a very, very long time. He plays Pokemon, and more specifically, he plays many fan-created Pokemon games. But when he plays these fan-created Pokemon games, he differs from other Pokemon creators in a way that he doesn't just blindly support and gas up the games and, put on some overwhelming facade when he plays them. He very consistently speaks his mind. If he doesn't like something, he says it. And, a lot of the biggest dramas that he was in had come from the idea that he spoke on something that he doesn't like or disagrees with, and this caused people to give him hate or come dislike his video. and just pretty much be outraged that he spoke his mind. And honestly, like, if he was to sit around and just kind of act happy and, you know, act like he loved the game regardless of the true thoughts that he had, those same people would probably come support him and give him a much bigger opportunity to grow. But is that truly worth losing yourself in the content just for some growth? It's kind of a hard call. That said, I'm a lot like him in that way. You know, I don't change my opinion. I'm not going to lie on stream. I'm not going to lie in my content. Whatever I say is truly whatever was on the top of my mind. And you can come see me say all these things live at twitch.tv/sauce_. Thank you guys for watching this video. Sub, like, follow, sub, like. What else do you do? Twitch, follow the Twitch. You know, I be twitching. I'll catch you in the next one.